We are live from the basement, Atlanta, Georgia. It's Ed Bailey, a special guest, Bradley Chambers from Chattanooga. How you doing, Bradley?
Yeah, hey. It's a great day here in Chattanooga. You and I are only like an hour and a half from each other, and I'm up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I will say, I've really thought that living in like being a fan of Georgia sports has always been like
Mm.
negative. It's like you've had bad luck. But I will say, you and I have both had a good year sports wise. I'm sitting here looking at my 1980 national championship
There you go.
Coke
Very
bottle,
nice.
and then I got my 2021. So yeah, it's been a nice year. Been a nice year for fans of Georgia sports. So that's a
I,
good
I got I
good
got
day.
I got to ask. You live in Tennessee, so the Volunteers fans haven't hunted you down and taken you out of your house and tarred and feathered you yet?
Well, the thing about Chattanooga you have to realize is I live 5 minutes from the Georgia border. Okay. So, and the main reason I moved to Chattanooga originally was there's no state income tax in
Mm.
Tennessee. So I can literally look out my window. I can almost see the Georgia border. I grew up in Georgia. Well, so you've got Georgia fans, Tennessee fans. Well, we're also 15 minutes from Alabama, the Alabama state line. Where the funny thing is, back when cell phones were not as good, and there
Mm.
wasn't as many towers, I had to actually. This is maybe again 15, 16 years ago. You'd actually turn off like the auto time on your cell phone because it would ping Central Time and change your time
Oh, it's
automatically. Like if you were
hilarious.
in downtown Chattanooga,
Hilarious.
it would change
Right.
because you were not far from Central Time. Like downtown Chattanooga is 15 minutes from Central Time. And
Right.
so there's like Alabama fans, Auburn fans, they're everybody is around here. So it's just been a nice year to be a Georgia sports fan. I've cried
Yeah, I
multiple
guess.
times watching the highlights.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a longtime Florida Gators fan, so having it disappointing and seeing the tears of Vols fans was always something I enjoyed.
Not gonna lie, it's nice. It's funny. You and I were talking earlier. We
Right.
a little drama on Twitter about and again we can have this opinion because you and I are like born and
Oh yeah.
raised in the South. People are upset about the cast iron. Have
Yeah,
opinions
yeah.
about cast iron.
Let's. I had to do it. Had to have a couple of tweets. It's the funniest thing. You and I are both longtime Southern boys. My family's from Mississippi. I mean, my grandmother, my grandma, great grandmother, my mama had the iron skillet. Always had the iron skillet. Ate out of the iron skillet. Fried chicken, biscuits, you name it. And the drama is too funny. I just it's too funny. I love it.
You cannot. The whole point of the cast iron is you can't break the cast iron. It's durable. This isn't like and I love Pampered Chef. We have a lot of Pampered Chef stuff at our house. This isn't like Pampered Chef stuff. We have to scrub it a certain way. Look, you could throw the stuff in the fire. You can do whatever you want with it. It's just going to still be there and it's going to work. And honestly, in my opinion, the harder you are on cast iron, the better things taste. Now that's probably just me making that up. That's just how I
Mhm.
feel.
It's just too funny. Like you get your Le Creuset and you spend your hundreds and hundreds of dollars on something, and then you get your $25 Lodge cast iron. So I want to show you. So this is it right here. I went and got my cast iron skillet right here. It's $15. This thing was been sitting out in my backyard for a year under my smoker because I use it for a drip pan. And I had someone get real upset with me about it, talking about how I'd ruined a perfectly good cast iron pan. So I got out my belt sander, I sanded it down, I put it into my big green egg at 700 degrees and cured it. Guess what? It's good as new. It's indestructible.
You get it. You
It's
get
just
me. You get me, Ed. You can't ruin them. And, but I will say, if you've got to have one cooking thing, that is the
mm,
cast iron. Getting a good cast iron might be honestly, if you're looking for like a wedding present for
oh,
somebody that's newly married, getting married, or a housewarming gift, a really good cast iron is not a bad way to do it. Not a bad gift at all.
we're gonna have to give Rachel, our fabulous community manager, a hard time. She has difficulties with the idea of making tea in the kettle. Being good Southern boys, and the idea of sweet tea. You make your tea, you put your Lipton in the kettle with the water because you need the heat to pour over the ice and the sugar. Gonna do that with Rachel because it's gonna make her it's gonna make her explode. We're gonna have to invite
Yeah,
her onto this next.
yeah, it's some good old fashioned Southern sweet tea. Now, digress. We have a fun topic today. We are really looking at you get LogStream. Here's the way I look at LogStream. Every company in the world needs LogStream or will need LogStream very soon. Observability data is growing 25% year over year. It is not getting it's not getting cheaper to analyze it, to store it. You've got to get smarter, faster, stronger with your data. So again, every company on earth needs LogStream. Now, but the question is, when you first get LogStream, we make it incredibly easy to get LogStream in the cloud. You can download it as software. You can even try a fully functional version in the cloud with our sandbox with canned data, because one of the things I tell people are like, if you want to try LogStream, oftentimes you may not have the ability to hook up the sources that you want right away to try it. You may have to get authorization. The sandbox is the perfect place to start. Sandbox.cribble.io. It's free. And you can run a fully functional version with canned data just even to get started. But again, so when in whatever method you want to use it, when you get started, like what are the if Ed Bailey was going back in time to tell Ed Bailey that first discovered LogStream many years ago, what do you wish you knew then?
And that's what I wanted to talk about. This was all inspired by several customer conversations that I've had recently. And by the way, talking to customers is the best part of the job. Love talking to people, going through how you can solve problems. Very common to you install LogStream, you got it on servers, and then what? And that's why I wanted to talk about what's next, how to start thinking through and avoid my mistakes. Because boy, I've made a lot of. And so, I mean, one of the things that we did, like my team, we saw the potential, we saw what we can do, and we went in tactical mode right away and started solving a whole bunch of problems. And then we created some technical debt and created some more problems because we didn't think through the implications. We didn't think through who we wanted to use the software. We didn't think about our workloads. Just didn't think through all these things well enough because we just got excited because we wanted to solve some problems. And that's why I want to start, just to help people learn from what the many things I've done wrong. Well, we're gonna have a lot of webinars of what I've done wrong.
Well, one of the things too, and it really goes back to our cast iron discussion. You get a cast iron and you think, well, this is good for this meat. But the more you use the cast iron, the more you want to use it for other things. LogStream, same way. You get it for one thing, and then the light bulb clicks off. And you think, okay, well, we're using it to lower our ingest into Splunk. Okay, well, what if, okay, we have this thing that's outputting this data. What if we mask that on the way in, send it to Amazon S3? You will use LogStream more. If you get LogStream today, you will use it for more things next year than you do today. The following year, it will be used for even more things. So you really want to plan from the beginning, structurally, architecturally, how to not have technical debt a year from now that you got to clean up.
I love the analogy between a cast iron pan and LogStream. We're going to have to share. We're going to have to share this on the quote Slack channel. But you're right. I mean, you start out with a good cast iron pan. You're frying bacon, but all of a sudden you start making biscuits in your cast iron pan. You start just doing things you just never thought about, and that's the thing with LogStream. That's why I want to start having these conversations about. Here's some things to think about when you get started. Just spend some time talking to your team. And the more time you think about it, the more that'll help you with your long-term planning. And this is just to get a real boring architectural discussion. A solution architecture. We've talked about architecture and deployment for LogStream more than once, but now we got to talk about once you deploy it, now what? And so start thinking about your goals beyond your initial use case. Most people, it's reduction, license, hardware, storage, something like that. But what else? Start thinking about, who do you want to get value from LogStream? Is it just your team? So let's talk organizational politics. For any team you're running a tool, the more people, the more groups that you can get to use your tool, the more value you're going to bring and the stickier that tool is going to bring. Especially if you can get outside your organization. So say I'm in IT ops. I bring in the security team. I've now moved outside my initial reporting vertical. And so now you have two whole potential C-level executives supporting what you're doing. You want to bring in as many different people and bring broad value to the enterprise. That's as if you're a leader in this area, that's how you do it, and that's how you build influence. Also,
I actually liken
good.
becoming an observability engineer,
Mhm.
and and from like a career perspective, if you're in this industry, becoming that person in your organization can be a big boom for your career growth, because you're going to be influencing so many different departments.
Right.
It's kind of like I almost feel like the people that really got mobility and Wi-Fi back when like the iPhone was getting big, the iPad was
Yep.
getting big. Like you were the most popular person and you were the most sticky person in an organization because you
Right.
touched so many different things. You were in manufacturing, you were in marketing, you were everywhere because that was the next up and coming industry, and you were that expert. So again, you I think it's wise to say kind of own that you are that champion of observability data in your organization and be involved in as many discussions as you can because honestly that's just great for your career.
Yeah, you're right. And that's a great point. And this is where organizations are starting to transition with the idea that data is an enterprise need. Most enterprises, you look at, there's more silos than a field in Kansas. The idea is that you have data that's needed by everybody. It's the security teams are going to need the same data as the operational teams. The operational teams are going to need most of the data that the security teams are going to need. So how do you become efficient and then route data as needed? And that's why a lot of organizations are starting to go to an enterprise observability, enterprise logging team in order to serve the needs of everyone, because it's just from an engineering standpoint alone, it's hard to find the right 4 or 5 people to run stuff for one organization, much less the enterprise. And so you can drive a lot of efficiency. And I like your idea about that observability engineer because you're put in a position to work across the org. And it's great for your career. And as a leader, it's great. It's great for your influence.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And lean into
Right.
the fact that you own this observability pipeline technology in your organization. You're the expert in it. It's going to make you. It's just going to be good for you long term.
Absolutely. And then finally, how's your enterprise going to get value now, next year, year 2, year 3, year 5? This is another thing in organizational politics. It is very, very important to have an idea of what the value you're delivering. If you get into a budget meeting with your CIO, your CISO, and they're saying, "Wow, you're spending a lot of money, and we need to cut budget," you need to be able to articulate your value now and your value later, because you'll be amazed because if you have those numbers in your back pocket, your budget's going to get protected. But the guy who's like, I don't know, maybe I'll get back to you next week with a list of stuff. It's a credibility exercise. So you're an architect or a manager in this area, know your numbers.
Yeah, that's knowing your numbers. That's great feedback.
So let's just start talking about your goals beyond the initial use case. So it's either going to typically starts in the operations and security side because it got just too much data, as you mentioned. Data is growing out of control. So you start talking about, okay, we can produce our Elastic or our Splunk license. We can cut this much storage, this much hardware, and those are big numbers. It's easy to see in organizations. It gets a 7-figure return is not unusual year over year. But what else? Because in the scheme of an organization, it's easy to write a check. But think about the other things that really start to matter. So one of the primary things that I start talking about with goals is how do you automate? How do you reduce engineering time focused on, some organizations call it keeping the lights on, some call it business as usual. I call it drudgery and things that are boring. How do you reduce the drudgery and things that are boring? How do you automate those tasks? How do you make it go away so that you can reorient your existing engineering to do things that deliver value? I have news for people. Onboarding a log and making a change in props and transforms that to for time date stamp, it's not a lot of business value. It's just, these are the kind of things that should be automated, and this is something that LogStream does. Next thing, security. If go ahead, Bradley.
I was going to say, I think I know there's an article one of our community members was interviewed for recently, and I'll find it and put it in the comments on the social channels. Don't feel like that if you're using LogStream to automate things that were previously done by hand, that you're giving away your job because there will always be more and more things to automate. I kind of reading that article reminded me of back when everybody used to run their own mail server, right? So mid 2000s, everybody was running Exchange, Curio, all those fun things. Well,
Right.
when really Google was the first one that came out with the hosted email for enterprise,
Mhm.
and I was big on that early. To me, it just immediately, but I was running. I moved off an Exchange server, the place I was at in like '08, into Google Apps for your domains. Like we were early into this, but it just clicked for me
Mhm.
because it was like I was a one person. It's like I don't want to do this, manage this server. And so certainly, if you're a smaller organization, using something like LogStream can mean the difference in you having like some sort of semblance of life outside of work versus you staying up late every night dealing with, these manual processes you're doing. I think the challenge often people feel like, well, if I'm doing this now and we automate this, well, I'm out of a job. Trust me, you're not. There will be, as you land and expand your use of LogStream, there will be more and more things that you want to do. You want to route things differently. You will have to replay them back into your analytics system. There will always be more use cases as you grow. And so don't be fearful of automating yourself out of a job.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. It's the boring stuff. It's not interesting. That was probably one of the biggest things when bringing in Lockstream for my team was making hard things go away, making them easy, being able to solve. Engineers want to be able to solve problems. They want to be able to do interesting things, and making annoying things go away and opening up new doors is just it's awesome. It really is, and that's a great article, by the way. It's Jamie Curtis from I believe jacuzzi.com, and that they're and talking about becoming an SRE and that automation's everything. But and the same thing. Let's talk about security. Lockstream has a dramatic impact on security, quality data. So it's from a different point of view. Operations teams are typically looking for cost reduction. Security teams are looking for different things. They're looking for better data, improved data, being able to scale better, being able to access more data sets. And so they're not necessarily saying, hey, we need to reduce data, but they're saying we need to get the right data. We need to be able to suppress this and elevate this. We need to enrich this. How often do you find a single framework, a single tool that's going to both save you money and get you better data and satisfy those needs? And that's what I'm talking about. If you're a leader, work across those two organizations, make your and be in a position to make real change in an organization.
I think if you're listening to this and you interested in LogStream, maybe new to LogStream, if there's one function that you should go talk to your security team about, it's data masking. Ed and I, you and I were on a call earlier, and we're talking about, Apple Pay. When you pay with your phone, you pay with your watch. The retailers, the technology people at the retailers, they love Apple Pay because they don't ever have your card. They don't have your card number. So if they get breached, you're not breached. And if I'm a CTO, CIO, I love not having data to lose, to be hacked,
Right.
because it's the kind of things that keep you up at night. So with data masking, so you can go to your cyber team and say, look, with LogStream, I can verify and make sure customer data, private information is masked on the way in before we ever store it. We never, ever have it. So if there's a situation later where there's a breach, we know customer data never hit our analytics systems.
Yeah, and that ability and just to give you some more context, you have the ability to preserve the right amount of data to help with your support and security processes, but still depersonalize that data. So last three digits of an ID number, last 3 or 4 digits of a social, or last 4 digits of a credit card number can be kept. The rest of it dumped. And you have prepackaged masks for prepackaged library of these types of masks. Same thing with I've seen with usernames, I've seen with full names. I saw one particular company that did something interesting with a lookup where they did a replacement where they would, if they had a name, they would replace it with an ID. So that way, and just goes back to that personal information, it's just not there anymore. But they still put themselves in a position to support the enterprise, from a security and operations standpoint. It's powerful because with other tools, you have to make a choice of I'm going to drop this data, which leaves you blind, or I'm going to take the data as is, which leaves you with a potentially enormous amount of risk in terms of, just as you mentioned, a breach, data compliance, some sort of privacy violation. So those are the kind of things that make people very nervous at a very high level in an organization.
Yeah. So if you're on the operations team,
Mhm.
security is not, under your purview authority, and you're rolling out LogStream, your security team may not be interested in day one. Look, here's the thing: security people are distrustful by nature, and that's okay. They should be. That's their job.
Mhm.
But I think you make sure they know, like, hey, we're rolling out this new tool on the operations side. We're using it as a cost reduction. There's some functionality from the security side that you might be interested in. Here's the sandbox. Here's some links to check it out. I'd be happy to help your team onboard some data sources. Just making sure they know that's available will be beneficial in the long run.
Yep, totally. So, and now I want to talk about data governance. This is a subject matter that a lot of people forget about, but this is another way that you elevate what you're doing beyond the tactical, beyond just application support, just security, where you get into the strategic realm of data. And as we mentioned repeatedly, data in the enterprise is growing out of control. But so there's growth, but it's also value. You see a lot of vendors talk about unlocking the value of enterprise data because it's there's so much of it. People have a hard time getting their arms around it and getting value. But there's enormous groups in companies under data governance. You call it the records team, you call it privacy, all sorts of functions, and because they're looking at the risk side. When you look at like a chief data officer, data governance is going to be one of their big roles, or sometimes this will roll up directly to the CISO. Lot of concern around this in terms of risk. So work with your records team, your whatever they're called, audit compliance, data governance teams. Use LogStream to their benefit. One of the big benefits I had was being able to create code in LogStream. So think of it as data as code to show the compliance teams that okay, for GDPR data, we've depersonalized the data that's going in the ops team. We have another stream of data that's going in the security team. And you can clearly see where the data is going. So there's just not the mystery, there's not the siloing, and that they have an idea of who has what. I would not believe how many problems you get in the big enterprises where this data is everywhere. No one's really sure, and it creates some potentially scary things. We've all heard about breaches with various data stores or databases being exposed to the internet, and that's a big question. Like, where is this stuff? And so, by using LogStream and being smart about it, work with your records teams, work with your audit and compliance, in order to provide that predictability of compliance. And here's the thing: those guys work with y'all. They're going to be able to. You're going to have less findings, less tickets. They're going to support you. They're going to help get you funding. So it's this powerful group that a lot of people forget about in most enterprises.
Yeah, and don't forget too. I mean, like again, you get these big enterprises. You may have people that are paying to throw the same data multiple times, and
Right.
like 'cause again, it's like left hands not knowing what the right hand's doing. Like this team, oh, that's our system, so we're going to make sure that's being stored and analyzed and backed up, et cetera, so we can have that. This team says the same thing. Well, if you've got a data governance team in place that's using LogStream, you can kind of like eliminate those kind of that's just waste. I mean, it's a waste storing everything in your analytics system, but certainly if you're storing it twice, yeah. So yeah, just having this like mind map of like where the data is coming from, who has access, and where it's going, and where it ends up. That should be on everybody's radar this quarter or next if it's not.
Yeah, I have a kind of a data, and this is where the whole concept of a single data pipeline to manage your enterprise operational security data. And I have a diagram that I want to share a little bit to give you that kind of concept. So number four, I label as M&A. I should have labeled this as transformation and flexibility. Enterprises are looking to be able to move faster, to change faster, to basically short circuit common cycles. So mergers and acquisitions present a unique set of risks to enterprises because, okay, company A has now bought company B. Company B, who's responsible for their security and operations? And it's typically on the security side, security operations. So does company B, the company that's been acquired, have a SOC? Has the security team left because they got bought? And so, but the thing is, the CISO for company A is now concerned about who's monitoring, what's going to happen. So, an IBM study that mentioned something like 30, 40% of M&As have a significant breach in the first year because of the lack of security integration. And one of the things with Lockstream I find particularly powerful is you can use Lockstream as an integration layer between company A and company B. So typically, company A is going to be, say, a Splunk shop. Company B is going to be running Elastic Beats. Getting Beats replaced in company B take a long time. I mean, it's a significant amount of time. One of the beauties of using LogStream is you can put LogStream in company B, point Beats at LogStream, and then let LogStream turn around, transform the data so that it can be monitored in a Splunk shop. So instead of replacing something of potentially thousands of endpoints, you're installing 6, 8, 10 servers and then making an endpoint change. And so you can get that work done in weeks instead of months. And I've actually seen years. And so I think the real point there is speed and flexibility. That's another very strategic high level is how do you get enterprise IT to move faster? Something that just the expense and slowness in enterprise IT is something that frustrates people at that C-level. And this is an example of how you can move things, move that vital security need of integration forward in a significant material way. That makes sense, Bradley?
Perfect sense. I mean, I think you can, when you look at technology from a high level, when you find things that make your company, I've said this once in this video, but I think it's worth saying again: better, faster, stronger. Lockstream makes your company better, faster, stronger. You're more in control, and you're more aware of where this data is and where it's going. And it's a word that we talk about a lot, that you and I talk about a lot, as choice and control.
Mhm.
Like
Yep.
there's a million different ways to use Lockstream. Like there's not one use case. The flexibility where your company can have the choice and control over format, location, tooling, all that, without needing more agents to be deployed. You just hook it up in the middle. Like you have a
Yep.
problem with it, with a system going to your analytics system, one source going there, hook it up with Lockstream. Lockstream makes every one of these things better.
Yeah, totally. And it's choice, control, flexibility. And finally, it's like digital transformation. So it's not just migrating to the cloud, but also using SaaS. Another long-term issue is people want to be able to take advantage of SaaS. SaaS provides faster access to data than, say, if you install something on-prem. For example, security tools, email security is a good example. 15 years ago, you would have been buying appliances from Cisco IronPort. You install them on-prem. You get them integrated with your on-prem exchange. 3 to 9 months later, they're live. Now with SaaS solutions, you're making quick changes. You're going through something like Proofpoint. You're routing your change your MX records. You route through Proofpoint. Proofpoint then logging to you on-prem, and then this is an example of you can use LogStream to be able to consume that data from Proofpoint very, very quickly and do it safely, and then again integrate into your security framework. But here's the catch: SaaS providers are counting for an easy onboarding and a hard offboarding, because they're counting on it to be sticky, that you've created a custom integration for them, and that you're going to have trouble getting, essentially decoupling, if you make that choice. Another thing with LogStream, it makes it even faster to set up that SaaS onboarding. So you're using LogStream Cloud, for example. You're going in and you're clicking enable port, loading a cert from Proofpoint, and a quick routing rule, and you're done. And so instead of having to install a server, having to install custom software, it just short circuits that process. But here's the beauty of it: if you want to change, say, Cisco now has a cloud for this, you switch yourself over to Cisco, and you can then have both of those products running at the same time, bringing in your data, and then you have a quick. I just turned it off because I don't need it anymore. You're removing that stickiness and giving you that choice and control over who your vendors are. And it just creates speed, it creates velocity, and I think that those things create a competitive advantage. What do you think, Bradley?
I think every vendor goes through a life cycle with a company, to where when you get a new vendor for something, that's like they're fixing all your problems, right? Every new
Right.
vendor they got the pitch, and then over time, like they become, maybe they don't work as well, maybe bad software releases, bugs, et cetera, et cetera. I think you should always be asking your question of every one of your vendors you have for everything in your organization, technology wise: how would I replace this vendor in a quarter, in a month, in a day, if I had to? They were bought by a company that we didn't want to do, but we didn't do business with for various reasons. If something else came out better, how would we get off of this vendor? And can we easily? And
Right.
I'm not sure there's a lot of companies that could say that about all their vendors, maybe some, but not all of them. And it really reminds me of, you remember the old company Google bought them? You remember Postini? You work with
Oh
that
yeah.
company?
Oh yeah.
So they were like cloud spam filtering. Back in the mid 2000s, Google bought them. As a great company. It probably is at the heart of everything spam filtering, Gmail wise. But it was one of those. It was a cloud based solution, even if you run it on prem. So you had you had your DNS records here. You point your MX to Postini, and obviously you make sure the users match up, and then Postini would just kind of like filter the mail and then drop it in your mail server. Well, the cool thing was, like, if you wanted to like change a new mail server, like you didn't have to redo your Postini setup. Like you just said, "Hey, Postini, the mail server's here now. Like just send that stuff here." It was glorious. Like you didn't lose your spam rolls, you didn't lose all this, and
Yep.
that's, again, you need to have that mindset of like, how would how would I get off of this vendor? How do I make sure that I'm not being locked into vendors' formats specifically? Because again, you may not care about that when you're signing up. Oh, yes, everything into your format today. That's fine. What if 5 years from now? 5 years goes by quickly and companies change. How would you eliminate a vendor, and how do you make sure you're not being locked into their particular formats?
Yeah, it's important. I mean, I saw a bank robber movie about having a plan to walk in the bank and have a plan to walk out. And that's so it's just, you got to know, you got to have your options. All right, let's go to talk about who do you want to get value from Lockstream. And this again comes back to bringing value to the enterprise to as many people as possible. So I mentioned your data team. So I've seen organizations around data. So more, data analytics looking operational data. So you have your loggings, what some people call their Elastic Splunk teams, observability teams. So that's what I think the newer terms, the terms we're trying to, because it's bigger than just moving data around. Cyber threat, IR, so IR for incident response, threat intelligence, SOC and SOAR. These are all groups that can work in Logstream. From a routing, filtering, management standpoint, you have your data, your logging, your observability teams. From a security standpoint, cyber threat, those are going to be the teams that typically manage the SIM. Incident response using Logstream replay, threat intelligence with being able to integrate and do data enrichment. SOC and SOAR, being able to trigger automations out of LogStream, the SOC team for using LogStream to manage security ingestion, security testing, and also their content creation pipeline. DevOps teams, this is a big one that I think, and this is something that people's trying to be a little bit late toward, but it's the idea is how do you get the most brains in your organization? Because typically these teams who are managing LogStream are really small. How do you get the if you can't hire people, how do you use other people's brains in order to expand what LogStream is doing? One of our community members just created a really interesting integration where he automated log onboarding so that now the dev team, so instead of having to put in requests to the logging team to do this, the dev teams can go and use a GitOps workflow to then leverage LogStream to onboard their logs, validate their logs, make sure the right metadata is attached, make sure the right source type and source is attached, and then only the logging team only gets involved in order to do a commit and deployment. And so the beauty of this is instead of consuming 4 to 8 hours of the logging team's time, it's going to consume just enough time to do a review and a commit. So let's call it less than an hour. And this just goes back to freeing up engineering time. Go from 8 hours to 1 hour. And that's it. And that scales. I mean, we see companies that have 2, 3, 400 applications sitting in their backlog. So even it did, and these are companies that are taking 6 to 8 weeks per application. But even if you go, from 8 hours, 8 hours per log to one, it's still a massive savings. Even with 100, that's 600 hours of potential savings. So it's really amazing what people are doing. Cloud
We all
teams,
know
another
the
example. Yep.
challenges
Go ahead.
in we all know the challenges in hiring people today, especially in
Yes.
this industry that have these skill sets. And the work has to get done. Like everything you described has to happen in every organization. If you cannot find the people or you cannot afford to hire the people that can do this, LogStream may be the difference in you getting this work done. Like if you said, if you're thinking, how can I take something that takes 8 hours and move it to one? Well, you can either use LogStream or you can hire 7 more people to spend time on this thing. The challenge is you may not be able to find 7 people.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
again,
I'll
it's
say you're
how do
not
you
going to.
right? It's how do you take the people that you have and allow them to be more efficient and make better use of their time. And it's something I've even been telling people like, look, it's not always about just like having the time. It's having like the mental energy to have the time to do it well. And
Right.
allows you to get rid of again the manual tasks that many of these engineers are doing and wasting their brain cycles on. No, it automates it. It makes it cuts the time down dramatically.
Yeah, this is another thing I did wrong. So when I first started trying to implement Splunk enterprise wide, held on to this thing. I'm basically people like wanted stuff, and I'm holding my iron skillet, beating back people because I was like, stop, you're gonna mess up my baby. It what made the difference in order to enablement was how so instead of control of the aspect, how do I empower people to get their things done? And so, we just wasn't working out because we frankly weren't going to hire enough people to be able to build all the dashboards and alerts for Splunk. And so what we do is, how do we enable people? So instead of my engineers building dashboards for people, they shifted to a mode of training and governance. So they're training other people how to build dashboards, other people how to build alerts, and they're providing guidance and governance. It took about a year, but we, instead of having, two people to be able to do this, we ended up going to a few hundred people who could then build dashboards. And that brain power just grew over time as all these developers, all these support engineers started learning Splunk. But you got to change that mindset. And this is an example of LogStream. Change that mindset to it's not just your little pool of things. How do you bring your framework to bring value to everybody?
It's really, if you can get layer one right, the pipeline right, you
Right.
can build on top of that. You have that firm
Exactly.
foundation with LogStream as your observability pipeline. Your options from there are limitless. And again, it goes back to empowering the people to build those own dashboards, do their own thing in a way that's secure. That, again, going back to data governance, if you have
Yep.
the foundation, the layer one right, everything else is possible.
Exactly. Let's go back to cloud data governance teams. We're want to bring them value. Ended up with helping audit and compliance. If you want to be able to look at the monitoring, if you want to be able to trace source types, God willing, and go for it. I'm gonna help you do it. I never forget we started to have this mindset. Then the compliance people are like, oh no, we don't want that. And I didn't really give them a choice because this, they can't you always got to be willing to say no, and you empower people in an organization because then when their bosses start getting upset, start talking about how they have access, they have the knowledge to do it, they just won't do it. And so it's just having a different conversation with people. This is all about how do you scale small teams to make big changes. It's the right tools, the right mindset, and the right plan. And this is the reason why I want to talk about this whole what's next idea. How do you get value across the enterprise? And finally, start thinking about also how do you get more and more value from Lockstream? You're always going to start with efficient data management, and this is something that never ends. You always want to keep. This is something I did with overnight teams, with the daytime teams, is having goals for, and also trying to have prizes, encouragement of every day find something new to optimize. Whether it's data that we want to get rid of, data we want to add, data we want to enrich. It's something that never ends. You're always going to have changes, always going to have requests. And this is why I love this Warren Buffett quote. The price is what you pay, the value is what you get. And so, and I wanted to make sure that the value that we got out of our tools was significantly bigger than what we paid. But you got to keep at it, and also have that developer mindset of make a change, iterate, test, keep going on and on. I always got super irritated with people who kept talking to me about a project. It's like, this ain't a project. This is never going to end unless, so, give me a word for something. Give me a word for work that's not going to end. It's going to keep on going. Maximize your engineering time. Maximize everyone's engineering time. There's not enough engineering time. It's the most valuable thing in an enterprise. So you always want to make sure you're spending your time on moving your business forward and not on, manual nonsense. Support, support better, more flexible security architecture. Another thing's always a problem. The security architectures always run into issues. How do you get more agile with recurring threats? Ransomware is a good idea. How do you be agile enough and be as agile as your attackers? I think that's the biggest advantage that cyber thieves have. They are way more agile and way more motivated than the enterprise are. So how do you put things in place in order to match that? Another thing, support transformation. Biggest thing at the C level is always about transformation because they're concerned other companies are going to transform and do things faster. So you need to make sure that you're very visible in the enterprise of how you're going to help too. And finally, data management, the focus on data privacy. You got to face it. There's not going to be less GDPRs and less privacy laws. There's going to be more. So you got to make sure you have the tools and tools in place to deal with what's inevitable. What do you think, Bradley?
I think Lockstream is one of those tools that allows you to say yes to more things and to
Yes.
get incrementally better every day. What's the whole thing? Like, get 1% better every day.
Yep.
Lockstream gets you 1% better every single day.
Yep.
And again, I think I still go back to number two, maximize engineering time. Every company is struggling with this. Engineers are expensive. There's not enough of them. And anything that you can do to take them off of the things that can be automated, the better.
Uh, you know, I could not agree more. And so And it helps everyone, being able to say, "Yes, I can't," and that's another thing. It makes people excited when you have to get on calls and you start talking about what you can't do, but when you have the right tools and mindset, you start being able to talk about what you can do. It changes the morale and it changes the focus of everyone. Everyone wants to innovate. So how do you spend more time innovating than you do just keeping things going?
Yeah.
Very good. So we have come to the end. So you have any closing comments, Bradley?
If you're watching this, maybe you scrolled on LinkedIn and maybe somebody liked it. Your company has this problem, whether you realize it or not. And if you're involved with observability data in any way, the most important thing you can do from here is a couple things: join our community, talk to other customers, ask about use cases, scribble.io/community, or try the sandbox. Trust me, sandbox is the way that it'll click in your brain. Sandbox.cribble.io, fully canned version, fully cloud version with canned data. You can start enriching data, reducing data right from your browser today with no hookup. Just playing our sandbox, and I promise you, every organization is made better by LogStream.
Hey, well said. I really appreciate it. Had a really great conversation. Thank you very much. Hope you'll come back soon. Really appreciate it. Yeah, we're missing Nick. Nick is in Maui having a good time enjoying the sun, but I am really glad, Bradley, you could be here and come back soon, please.
Hey, thanks, Ed. Everybody have a great day.
Great. Take care. Thank you.